They say the most life-changing moments don't come crashing in with fanfare. They whisper, they drift. And sometimes they appear in the flicker of fluorescent lights on a waxed airport floor where no one's looking for anything except their next flight or their next coffee. This story begins with a glance, not love at first sight. No, that would be too simple. It starts with concern, confusion, and an impulse born of kindness. And somehow it ends with a kind of love that could never have been planned. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where in the world you're tuning in from. Now, it was 1:43 p.m. on a Thursday when Ravi spotted him. Gate 43, near the oversized windows that framed the tarmac in streaky sunlight. Ravi was pushing his cleaning cart past the rows of sleepy travelers and discarded coffee cups, minding his own quiet rhythm, when he saw the man in the tailored navy suit slowly slump against the wall like a marionette losing its strings. Ravi stopped mid-step. The man's skin had gone pale, an alarming grey pink that didn't belong on anyone alive. Sweat dripped down his temple, soaking into the collar of a dress shirt that probably cost more than Ravi made in a week. He clutched his chest with one hand, fishing clumsily through his coat with the other. No one else noticed. Of course they didn't. People moved like ghosts in airports, each lost in their own world of schedules and stress. Ravi hesitated for just a breath. He was taught not to interfere. Just clean, just be invisible. But something in his gut didn't let him move on. He left the cart right there and jogged over. "Sir?" he asked. "Are you okay?" The man shook his head slightly, like the movement took effort. "Need, medicine. Jacket pocket. Blood sugar." Ravi didn't ask questions. He reached into the man's coat and pulled out a small black glucose meter and a silver pillbox, but there were no pills inside. "Empty," Ravi muttered, panic rising. "Where can I get more?" The man tried to speak, but his eyes rolled back. Ravi caught him just before he slid to the ground entirely. "Someone call for help," he shouted. A few heads turned now. A security guard came running. Ravi stayed kneeling beside the man until paramedics arrived. They lifted him onto a stretcher, an oxygen mask now covering his mouth, IV already in his arm. Ravi backed away, but his eyes never left the stranger's face. "Coming with him?" one paramedic asked. Ravi didn't think. He just nodded. Yes, the airport's clinic was small but efficient. The staff rushed the man inside and began stabilizing him. Ravi sat outside in a folding chair, hands shaking. He didn't even know the man's name. All he had was a memory of grey skin, trembling fingers, and the sharp smell of cologne mixed with fear. After a few minutes, a nurse came out. "He's stable now," she said. "Said his name is Neil Kapoor. He's a diabetic and forgot his emergency meds. He needs a refill prescription before he can leave." She handed Ravi a note scribbled with the dosage. He says he lost his wallet. No ID, no card. Pharmacy won't release anything without upfront payment. Ravi stared at the paper, then at his own wallet. It wasn't full, but it had enough, just barely. He walked to the pharmacy on the other side of the terminal. The lady behind the counter gave him a suspicious look as he handed over crumpled bills. "Name on the prescription doesn't match yours," she said. "I know, it's for someone who collapsed. He doesn't have his ID." She raised an eyebrow but rang it up anyway. $74. Ravi flinched. That was groceries for the week. He paid it anyway, took the tiny white bag, walked it back across the terminal and handed it to the nurse without waiting for thanks. "Tell him he'll be fine," Ravi said, then turned and left before she could respond. The rest of his shift passed in a blur. He scrubbed toilets, mopped tiles, emptied bins. But his mind stayed on that man in the suit, Neil, a stranger, a millionaire maybe, judging by the Rolex peeking from his sleeve. Why couldn't he forget his face? Why did it matter that Neil would never know what Ravi had done? And why did it feel like he'd left something behind in that sterile white clinic room, a piece of himself he hadn't meant to give away? The next morning, Ravi woke before the sun. Not because of his alarm, which would go off in another 30 minutes, but because his thoughts had never truly let him sleep. He stood barefoot in the kitchen, quietly boiling water for tea. The apartment was still. His sister Meera snored. Softly behind the thin wall they shared, Ravi moved like a ghost, careful not to wake her. He reached for his wallet on the counter, opened it, a few coins, a faded bus pass, and an emptiness that sank a little deeper than usual. $74 gone. It wasn't regret, not really, but it stung, because that money had a destination. Rice, lentils, laundry tokens, a pair of school shoes Meera had been too proud to ask for, but clearly needed. He shook his head and took a sip of tea. It was done. Let it go. But it didn't let him go. That man, Neil. Pale, breathless, brilliant in a way Ravi couldn't name. There was something else, too. A loneliness that leaked from his voice when he'd asked for help, as if he wasn't used to needing anyone, as if it frightened him. Ravi pushed the thought away. Time to move. He tied his worn boots, pulled on his faded navy uniform, and stepped into the morning light. At the terminal, everything was as it always was. Cold tiles, distant announcements, the smell of jet fuel mixing with coffee and bleach. Ravi grabbed his cart, nodded at the security guards, and slipped back into the rhythm of invisibility. But halfway through his first route, he saw a familiar figure. Standing near the pharmacy counter, tall and unmistakable in his fitted black coat, was Neil. Ravi froze. He hadn't expected this, hadn't even hoped for it. Neil turned. Their eyes met. And then he walked straight toward him. Ravi stiffened, heart pounding. "You," Neil said, stopping just short. His voice was smooth but low, like it had been sanded down by exhaustion. "It was you, wasn't it?" Ravi blinked. "Sir?" "The medicine," Neil said. "You paid." Ravi glanced down. Yeah." Neil reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a sleek black envelope. He held it out. Ravi didn't move. "I don't want that," Ravi said. "It's not charity," Neil said quickly. "It's a refund." "I didn't ask for it." "Then consider it repayment." "I didn't do it for money." That stopped Neil. They stood in the middle of the concourse, two men from entirely different planets, locked in a moment too honest to hide from. Travelers brushed past them like water around stones. Neil's expression softened. He lowered the envelope. "Then why did you do it?" he asked quietly. Ravi didn't answer right away. "Because you needed help," he said finally. "And no one else saw you?" Neil nodded slowly, then tucked the envelope back into his coat. "I don't know how to say thank you in a way that makes sense," he admitted, "but I'd like to try." Ravi raised an eyebrow. Neil offered a faint, crooked smile. "Can I buy you a coffee?" Ravi blinked. "Now?" Neil glanced at his watch. "Unless you're working." "I'm always working," Ravi said, almost like a joke. Neil tilted his head. 15-minute break? Ravi hesitated, looked toward the cleaning supervisor. Kiosk. He took off his gloves, wiped his hands on his shirt, and nodded once. "All right." They sat at a small cafe near Gate 51, tucked in a corner beneath a flickering screen, listing delayed flights. Ravi ordered black tea. Neil got a double espresso and didn't touch it. The silence between them was oddly comfortable. Ravi looked around at the tables, the businessmen on phones, the toddlers shrieking for snacks. "You don't seem like someone who gets stuck," Ravi said finally. Neil glanced up. "Stuck? In airports, without a wallet, without medicine." Neil looked away. "You'd be surprised." Ravi sipped his tea. Neil ran a hand through his thick dark hair and leaned back. "I had a driver. We got separated at security. I'd flown in from Singapore on zero sleep. My assistant wasn't there. My bag was. Rerouted, he gave a self-deprecating chuckle. Classic rich guy mistake. I assumed I'd always have someone carrying the details. Ravi said nothing. Neil leaned forward. And then I nearly passed out in front of gate 43. And you... He paused. You showed up. Ravi didn't look at him. Anyone would have. No, Neil said. No, they wouldn't have. Another pause. The sound of a nearby boarding call echoed through the terminal. I've been trying to remember your name, Neil said. The nurse didn't know. The receipt didn't have it. The pharmacy lady was useless. It's Ravi, he said quietly. Neil smiled. Ravi. The way he said it made something shift in Ravi's chest. I'm Neil. I know. Ravi said. Neil chuckled again. Right. Of course you do. A moment passed, then Neil leaned in, lowering his voice. Can I see you again? Ravi looked up, surprised. Why? Neil's gaze didn't waver. I don't know, he said, but I think I need to. Ravi didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. Instead, he stood from the cafe table, nodded once, and walked back toward his cleaning cart, like the conversation hadn't shaken the floor beneath him. His hands moved on autopilot, spraying, scrubbing, collecting gum wrappers from under benches, while his thoughts spun like jet engines on idle. See him again? What would that even look like? He cleaned bathrooms. Neil owned buildings. Their worlds didn't just run parallel. They never touched, or at least they weren't meant to. But then, hadn't they already collided? He could still feel the weight of Neil's eyes across the table, the way he'd said his name like it mattered. Ravi wasn't used to being seen. Not really. Not in the way that paused time. By the time his shift ended, the sun had already started to bleed gold across the edges of the windows. Ravi peeled off his gloves, stuffed them into the bin, and started toward the exit when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text. Dinner? No pressure. Just a thank you. Neil. Ravi stared at it for a long time. His thumb hovered. He walked out of the terminal into the evening air, let the wind cool his face. The parking lot glinted with reflections of the setting sun. He finally typed back, I get off late. And I don't do fancy places, the reply came instantly. Neither do I, not when it matters. 2 days later, Ravi stood awkwardly in the gleaming marble lobby of a downtown skyscraper. He'd almost backed out 6 times, wore his cleanest button-down shirt, still felt wildly out of place. The receptionist had smiled, made a call, and then guided him to a private elevator with polished brass buttons. Mr. Kapoor is expecting you, she said. The elevator whooshed him up 34 floors. Ravi's reflection stared back at him in the mirrored walls. His collar was uneven, his shoes scuffed, his pulse way too loud in his ears. Then the doors opened. Neil stood waiting, sleeves rolled to his elbows, the city skyline sprawling behind him through floor-to-ceiling windows. Hey, he said, smiling in a way that disarmed everything. You came. Ravi stepped out, nodding. You said no. In fancy places, Neil grinned. Technically, this is my office, and the food is from the taco truck downstairs. Sure enough, a small table near the window held 2 greasy brown bags and glass bottles of soda. Wasn't sure what you liked, Neil said, pulling out a chair, so I got one of everything. They ate quietly for a few minutes. Ravi watched as Neil leaned back in his chair, tie loosened, devouring a quesadilla like he hadn't eaten all day. This is, Ravi began, searching for the right word. Weird, Neil laughed. God, yes, completely. I mean, we shouldn't even be talking. I know, Ravi gestured at the office. All this, and I'm just, don't finish that sentence. Neil's voice was calm but firm. Ravi raised an eyebrow. You're not just anything, Neil said. You're the guy who noticed when I was about to die, who paid for medicine he couldn't afford, and who walked away without waiting for applause." He took a sip of his soda. "Do you know how rare that is?" Ravi looked out the window, where the city pulsed with lights and lives. "I wasn't trying to be rare," he said. "I was trying to be human." Neil's voice softened. "Well, that's even rarer." Silence settled over them again, but this time it didn't ache. Neil stood and walked to a shelf, pulling down a leather folder. He returned and slid it across the table. Ravi opened it hesitantly. Inside was a check, made out to him, for 10 times what the medicine had cost. He stared at it, stunned. "I don't want this," he said quietly. "I know," Neil replied. "But I needed to offer it, because people like me, we measure everything in transactions, and people like you remind us how broken that is." Ravi closed the folder and pushed it back. "I didn't come here for money." Neil looked at him, something unreadable in his expression. "Why did you come?" Ravi met his gaze. "I don't know yet," he said. "But maybe to see if any of this was real." Neil didn't smile this time, he just nodded. "It is." They sat for a long moment, the sounds of the city muffled by glass and altitude. Ravi stood. "I should go." "I'll walk you down," Neil offered. They rode the elevator in silence, but not the uncomfortable kind, the thoughtful kind. When the doors opened at the lobby, Ravi turned to him. "I don't know what this is," he said, "or where it's going." "Neither do I," Neil replied, "but I'm not afraid to find out." Ravi gave a small, tired smile. "Then I guess I'll see you around." As he stepped out into the night air, the city didn't feel quite so unfamiliar anymore. And somewhere between floor 34 and the sidewalk, something had shifted. Maybe not love, but something with a pulse, something alive. It began like most new things do, not with declarations but with patterns, small ones, quiet ones. A text every other day. A coffee left on a bench near Ravi's cart with a note. "Didn't know your break time, took a guess." A shared look across the terminal during passing chaos. And always, always, a question hanging between them like the echo of a door left ajar. What are we doing? But neither dared ask it out loud. One Saturday, after a long shift scrubbing a particularly grimy restroom in Terminal B, Ravi stepped outside to wait for his bus and found Neil already there. No suit, no swagger, just jeans, a windbreaker, and a quiet smile. "Stalking me. Now?" Ravi said, raising an eyebrow. Neil shrugged. "I prefer the term spontaneous transit companion." Ravi smirked. "You're not getting on this bus." Neil lifted a paper bag. "But I do have biryani." The smell was immediate, warm spices and slow-cooked meat wrapped in foil. Ravi's stomach growled. "Fine," he muttered. 15 minutes. They sat on a low, concrete ledge beside the road, plastic forks in hand, watching traffic roll past. Ravi ate slowly, savoring each bite. He hadn't tasted biryani like this since his mother passed. Neil didn't speak, just waited. When Ravi was nearly done, he finally asked, "Why are you doing this?" Neil looked out at the road. "Because I like you, Ravi." The fork paused in Ravi's hand. "I don't mean in a pay-you-back kind of way," Neil added quickly. "I mean, I like being around you. You don't treat me like an investment, or a failure, or some brand." Ravi swallowed. His throat felt suddenly tight. "I don't know how to be anything else," he said. "I hope you don't change," Neil said, looking over, "because I've had everyone else." Ravi didn't answer, but he didn't pull away either. They sat there side by side as night fell. The air turned colder, and Neil offered him his jacket without asking. Ravi took it. That became another pattern. Dinner once a week. Long talks. Neil would show up at the most unexpected times, blending clumsily into Ravi's routine like he was trying to earn a life he hadn't been born into. And slowly, so slowly Ravi didn't even notice, he began to look forward to it. He began to crave it. One evening, Ravi invited Neil to his apartment. He warned him first. It's small, cramped, no view. Mira's home studying, so don't say anything dumb. Neil just smiled and said, "Sounds perfect." The apartment was warm and lived in. Faded cushions, a humming fan in the corner, the scent of cardamom tea on the stove. Mira eyed Neil like a hawk but shook his hand anyway. They ate together on the floor, plates balanced on knees, Mira laughing at Neil's inability to handle the spice. After she went to bed, Ravi and Neil sat by the window, legs crossed, sipping hot tea. "This is real," Neil whispered. Ravi didn't respond. He was afraid to breathe too deeply, afraid this bubble would burst. Neil turned to him. "Can I ask something?" "Sure. What happens if I fall for you?" Ravi's heart nearly stopped. Neil's voice was soft, but steady. Not out of gratitude or awe, just because I can't help it. The room felt suddenly too small, too close. Ravi looked down at his hands. "Then you better be sure," he said quietly, "because I don't come with escape hatches. I don't vanish when it's inconvenient." Neil leaned closer, his voice a breath now. "I don't want escape. I want to stay." The words landed like truth, quiet but undeniable. And when Ravi looked into his eyes, he saw no pity, no projection, no attempt to fix or reshape him. He saw someone choosing him, not despite everything, but because of it. The first time they kissed, it didn't feel cinematic. It wasn't under moonlight or in the rain or at some dramatic airport gate with music swelling in the background. It was after a late dinner of leftover curry and rice, when Ravi had fallen half asleep on the floor, while Neil was scrolling through some obscure indie film they both agreed was terrible. Neil looked over, saw Ravi's head leaning back against the couch cushion, his eyelids fluttering. Something soft and open lived in that moment. "Hey," Neil whispered. Ravi cracked one eye open. I'm going to do something stupid now." Ravi blinked. "What else is new?" But Neil didn't laugh. He leaned in, slow, uncertain, and when their lips touched, Ravi felt something unfamiliar slip beneath his ribs. Not desire, not surprise. Something gentler, safety. He didn't kiss back right away. He waited, let the moment breathe. And then, like it had been waiting years to happen, he leaned in too. There were no fireworks, no rush of heat, just stillness. Stillness that said, "You are seen, you are safe." After Neil pulled back just enough to study Ravi's face. "Was that okay?" he asked. Ravi nodded. Yeah. It was more than okay. From then on, things didn't get easier, but they got clearer. Neil didn't care about secrets, but Ravi had them. He still couldn't explain why he never trusted nice things to stay. Why he bristled when Neil offered to pay for groceries or fill the kitchen with food Ravi never asked for. One night, after Ravi had quietly returned an expensive coat Neil bought him, they argued. "I'm not trying to own you," Neil snapped. "It's just a coat." "It's never just anything with you," Ravi shot back. "You live in a world where every gesture has a price tag. I don't." Neil exhaled sharply, stepping back. Okay, I hear you." Ravi paced the room. "You can't fix everything. With your wallet, Neil. I'm not trying to fix you. I'm trying to be with you." The words silenced them both. Ravi sat on the edge of the bed. "I'm not used to someone showing up and staying. It feels like waiting for the floor to disappear." Neil knelt in front of him. "Then I'll sit on the floor with you until you're ready to believe it's solid." In that silence, something shifted again. Ravi nodded once, and Neil wrapped his arms around him, not like a shield, but like an anchor. The next morning, Ravi found a small card on the counter. On one side it said, "No returns, no receipts, just love." On the other, a sketch of two hands holding each other, drawn in shaky pen. Ravi smiled. tucked it into his wallet. It stayed there, next to the faded bus pass and worn coins, untouched, but often reached for. As weeks passed, they built something. Real, messy, imperfect, rooted in things neither fully knew how to name. They went grocery shopping together in silence, watched documentaries they both hated, laughed until they cried when Neil tried to cook and almost burned down the kitchen. Mira grew used to the rhythm, her teasing softened. Ravi caught her smiling sometimes when Neil brought over mangoes or helped with the dishes. One day she pulled Ravi aside. "You're different," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "Bad different," she smirked. "No, just lighter." Ravi looked at her for a long moment. "He's real, Mira." "I know," she said. "That's why I'm scared for you," he exhaled. "Me too, because even as the days stretched out like golden thread, Ravi still waited for the world to snap it. But then came the night Neil asked him to meet someone. "My mother," he said. "She's in town, wants to meet the man I've been talking about non-stop." Ravi's breath caught. "She knows." Neil smiled softly. "She knows I'm in love." The words hit Ravi like rain after drought. "I don't know if I'm ready," he whispered. Neil reached out, took his hand. "Then I'll wait, as long as it takes." They stood there, fingers intertwined. No one moved, because for the first time in a long time, Ravi wasn't just standing in someone else's story. He was writing one, and it was his, in every beat, every breath, every broken, beautiful step. Ravi didn't sleep much the night before meeting Neil's mother. He lay awake, eyes open to the cracked ceiling above his bed, heartbeat a constant, reminder that some risks felt bigger than cliffs. His mind returned again and again to one question. What if she sees right through me? Mira stirred across the room, half asleep. "Stop thinking so loud." He let out a breath and turned over. "Sorry, you like him," she mumbled. "I think I love him." "Then stop acting like you stole something. Go meet the woman." Morning came too fast. Ravi ironed his cleanest shirt 3 times. Neil had offered to send a car. Ravi insisted on the train. He needed the time, the grounding. The restaurant was in a quiet corner of the city, elegant but not overwhelming. Ravi arrived early, sat on a bench outside, and tried to slow his breathing. Neil appeared 10 minutes later, hair slightly windblown, shirt untucked beneath his coat. "You showed up," he said, visibly relieved. "I said I would," Ravi replied. "I keep my word." Neil touched his shoulder lightly. "You look incredible. Don't lie. Then I'll say it again when she sees you." They walked inside together. At a corner table, a woman with streaks of silver in her dark hair rose to greet them. She had the same sharp eyes as Neil, though softer at the edges. "Mom," Neil said gently. "This is Ravi." Ravi offered a nervous smile. "Ma'am." She took his hand. Not a shake, a hold, warm, grounded. "Call me Sahana," she said. "If Neil's serious about you, you're family." That word, family, landed somewhere in Ravi's chest like a truth he wasn't ready to hold. They sat. Ravi fidgeted. With his napkin, Sahana ordered chai for the table. She asked about his work, his sister, his favorite childhood food. She didn't flinch when he told her about his mother dying of liver failure, about scrubbing floors to pay for Mira's tuition. "You're honest," she said, eyes steady. "I like that." Ravi glanced at Neil. He looked proud. "I wasn't sure what to expect," Sahana admitted, "but I see what Neil sees in you." Ravi's throat tightened. "And what's that?" "A man who doesn't want anything from him." He didn't know what to say. Neil stepped in gently. "Mom, Ravi's the reason I'm still standing." Sahana nodded. "Sometimes God sends angels in orange vests," they laughed. Lunch passed slowly, comfortably. Ravi felt the edges of his fear soften. She asked about his cooking, He promised to bring her his mother's recipe for coconut chutney. By the end, Sahana hugged him like she'd known him forever. As they walked outside, Neil slipped his fingers into Ravi's. "You okay?" "I think so." "She loves you." Ravi gave a crooked smile. "She doesn't even know me." "Doesn't matter. She trusts what she sees." They walked in silence for a while, hand in hand, until Ravi asked, "What happens now?" Neil looked at him. "We keep going, one step at a time." That night, back in his apartment, Ravi lay in bed and thought about the word belonging. It used to feel like a distant city, somewhere other people lived. But now it was starting to feel like a room with a light left on, an invitation. Weeks passed. They slipped into rhythm. Ravi would still scrub floors, but sometimes Neil would wait outside, holding warm coffee and 2 sandwiches. One night they cooked dinner together. Ravi showed Neil how to roll dough for parathas. Neil failed spectacularly, flour dusting the tip of his nose. Ravi laughed harder than he had in years. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Neil asked, wiping flour from his cheek. "Because I never thought I'd find this," Ravi said. Neil grew quiet. "You deserve it," he whispered, "more than anyone I know." But Ravi wasn't sure. Not yet. And then came the call. A manager at the airport, one Ravi barely spoke to, asked to see him. They met in a dull office with flickering lights. "You're being considered for supervisor," the man said. "Good. Feedback. Good timing. There's a chance." Ravi blinked. "What, me?" "Keep your head down. No drama. You'll hear soon." He walked out in a daze. When he told Neil later, Neil beamed. "That's amazing. I haven't got it yet. Still, it means someone noticed. And that matters." Ravi nodded slowly, but part of him wondered, could something this good, this full of light, really be meant for him? That night, Neil curled up beside him and whispered, "When you doubt yourself, lean on me." So Ravi did, a little more every day. The envelope came on a Tuesday. Plain white, no logo, just his name scrawled across the front in blue ink. Ravi stared at it for nearly 5 minutes before opening it, standing there beside the staff lockers. The bleach smelled sharp in the air. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Black ink. 1 sentence. "Congratulations. You've been promoted to cleaning supervisor, Terminal A." He read it 3 times. Then again, just to be sure. His knees felt hollow, his heart a thundering panic drum. He'd never had a title before, never been seen by anyone above floor level. For a moment, he felt like that boy again, the one sweeping classrooms after hours so his sister could eat, the one who'd learned to survive in the quiet corners of life, never expecting a spotlight. And now, here it was. Blinding. He walked out of the staff room and sat in the stairwell. Called Mira. She picked up on the second ring. "What's wrong?" "I got it," he whispered. "The promotion." There was silence, then a shriek so loud he had to pull the phone away. "Ravi, you did it! You actually, oh my God!" She kept talking, crying, laughing. He let her. When she finally paused to breathe, she said, "You deserve every bit of this. Don't you dare act surprised." But he was surprised, deeply, profoundly. That evening Neil brought cake, not a fancy one, just a rectangle from a local bakery with lopsided icing that read, "Terminal A Bossman." Ravi laughed until his stomach hurt. "You really wrote this?" Neil grinned. "I was going to write Supervisor of Shine, but that felt like too much." They celebrated in Ravi's tiny kitchen with warm chai, leftover biryani, and Neil dancing badly to 90s Bollywood songs. And when Ravi finally stopped laughing long enough to exhale, he said, "I'm scared." Neil stopped mid-step. "Of what?" "Of losing myself?" Neil walked over, took his hands. "Ravi, you didn't become someone else to get here. They saw you. All of you. That's what earned this." Ravi looked at him. "What if it changes everything? Then we change together." That night Ravi slept deeply, for the first time in months. The next day he wore a new shirt. Not expensive, just different. Clean lines, crisp collar. He stood taller, walked slower. He started learning to delegate, to correct mistakes kindly, to listen. The other cleaners, most older than him, watched him closely. One, a man named Pasha, pulled him aside. "You don't act like a boss." "I don't feel like one yet," Ravi admitted. Pasha grinned. "That's why you'll be good at it." Word spread quickly. Ravi, the cleaner who kept his head down and worked through storms, was now in charge of Terminal A. The shift managers began saying hello. The security guards started nodding first. Mira told her college friends. Neil told literally everyone. Even Sahana called to say, "Now that's the kind of son-in-law I want." Ravi choked on his tea, but beneath the joy, something else stirred. One night, while Ravi was closing up, he found an envelope taped to the inside of a supply cabinet. No name, just the words, "Some of us don't get promoted, don't forget us." His hands trembled. He took the note home, showed Neil. Neil read it and looked up slowly. "How do you feel?" "Guilty," Ravi admitted. "Like I stole something." Neil shook his head. "You didn't steal anything. You earned your place. But if that note's true, then you're in the perfect position to change things." Ravi stared at it. "What if I don't know how?" "Then ask," Neil said gently. "Listen, that's where it starts." So Ravi did. He started spending 10 minutes of every shift walking the floors, not inspecting, just listening. He asked people what they needed, what tools broke too often, what chemicals burned their skin. He made notes, reported things up, fought when no one else would, and slowly the whispers changed, from "he got lucky" to "he listens." From just another brown guy with a badge to "that's Ravi, he's one of us." At home, things felt steadier. Mira got invited to a prestigious university program. Ravi cried when she showed him the email. Neil kissed the corner of his eye and whispered, "We're building something, aren't we?" Ravi nodded, brick by brick. That weekend, Neil took Ravi to the ocean. They stood barefoot in the cold sand, waves lapping at their ankles. "You've changed," Neil said softly. Ravi braced. "For the better," Neil added, "but more importantly, you haven't changed away from who you are." Ravi looked out at the water. "I still feel like a janitor pretending to wear a crown." Neil reached down and picked up a small shell, placed it in Ravi's palm, "Then let it be a reminder of where you came from and where you're going." Ravi held the shell tightly, not as a keepsake, as a promise. It was a Thursday when Ravi's past came knocking, not with a bang, but a soft, scraping whisper from the shadows he thought he'd outrun. He was on the platform, waiting for the 5:12 train. His supervisor badge clipped neatly to his shirt, a quiet pride tucked into the corners of his mouth. That's when he heard the voice, rough, low, unmistakable. "Ravi?" He turned, a man in a worn green jacket, skin darker from sun than time, eyes sharp and tired. It took Ravi a few seconds to place the face. "Bhaskar," he breathed, his cousin, his childhood rival. The boy who once stole coins from Ravi's school bag and lied to their grandmother about it. They hadn't spoken in years. Bhaskar looked him up and down. "You've changed." Ravi managed a nod. "You're in the city?" "Just got here. Looking for work. Thought I'd try the airport. Word is it's cleaner than the slums." Ravi didn't smile. "It is, but not by much." Bhaskar shifted awkwardly. "I heard you're the boss now." "I'm a supervisor for one terminal. That's more than most." Silence stretched between them. The train's headlights glowed in the distance. Bhaskar looked down at his worn shoes. "You still angry about what happened back then?" Ravi blinked. "That was a long time ago." "Doesn't mean it didn't leave marks. He wasn't wrong." Ravi sighed. "Why are you really here?" Bhaskar's voice dropped. "I need work, and I was hoping maybe—" Ravi's chest tightened. The old reflex, protect yourself, don't get used, flared up. "I'll see what I can do," he said carefully. "But no promises." Pasca nodded slowly. That's more than I expected. They boarded the train in silence. That night, Ravi told Neil everything. Neil listened quietly, sitting on the kitchen counter, tea in hand. I don't want to be used, Ravi said, but I don't want to become someone who says no just because it's easier. Neil nodded. Maybe you set boundaries and give him a chance. So Ravi did. He spoke to a hiring manager, made it clear there was no favoritism, just a resume and a trial period. Bhaskar got the job. For the first week, he kept to himself, worked hard, didn't complain. But Ravi could feel the eyes on them, other cleaners whispering, watching. One day, Pasha pulled Ravi aside. You sure about him? No, Ravi admitted. But I'm sure about second chances. The next day, Bhaskar found Ravi in the break room. You didn't have to help me, he said. I didn't do it for you, Ravi replied. I did it because someone once helped me when I didn't deserve it. Bhaskar nodded. I won't let you down. Ravi gave him a tight smile. Good, because I don't have room in my life for ghosts anymore. Still, ghosts had a way of lingering. Ravi began dreaming of his mother again, her face thin, eyes hollow, asking him if he was forgetting where he came from. He woke up one night in a cold sweat. Neil stirred beside him. Nightmare? Yeah, Ravi whispered. Want to talk? Not yet. So Neil reached for his hand in the dark, held it, said nothing more, and somehow that was enough. The next morning, Ravi found a note taped to the bathroom mirror. You're allowed to move forward without guilt. Love N. He smiled. A few days later, Bhaskar showed up outside Ravi's apartment with a plastic bag. Found these old photos in my backpack, he said, from when we were kids. Ravi flipped through them. Grainy images of two boys laughing by a river, eating mangoes with juice dripping down their chins. I don't remember these moments, he admitted. Doesn't mean they didn't happen, Bhaskar said. They stood quietly for a moment. You ever think about going back? Bhaskar asked. To the village? Ravi said. Sometimes. But I think I belong here now. Bhaskar looked at the building, at the peeling paint and iron gate. Funny where life takes us. Ravi nodded. Not funny, just stubborn. That evening he placed one of the photos on his wall, right above his desk. Mira saw it and smiled. That's the Ravi I remember. I don't think I ever left him behind, he said softly. Later, Neil came over with dinner. As they ate on the floor, Ravi asked, Do you think people can really change? Neil didn't hesitate. I think people remember who they were before life told them to be someone else. Ravi leaned back, let the words sink in. He was still changing, still healing, still trying. But for the first time, he didn't feel like he was doing it alone. The promotion brought more than just responsibility. It stirred a storm beneath the calm surface of Ravi's life. One afternoon, as he walked the terminal inspecting the new cleaning schedules, he noticed a woman arguing with the airline staff at the gate. Her voice was sharp, trembling with frustration. Neil. Ravi's breath caught. He quickened his pace, weaving through passengers, and saw Neil standing there, hands balled into fists, jaw clenched. Is everything okay? Ravi asked quietly. As he approached, Neil glanced over, a flicker of relief washing over his face. I'm sorry you had to see that. No need. What happened? Neil exhaled. Flight got delayed. They lost my luggage, and when I asked for compensation, they were rude. Ravi nodded slowly. Want me to call someone? Neil shook his, head. No, I hate feeling powerless. Ravi understood that feeling better than most. They found a bench near the gate, and Neil leaned back, eyes scanning the busy crowd. I thought being rich would fix everything, he said, but it just means more problems, different ones. Ravi looked at him. What if it's not about money? Neil met his gaze. Then what? Maybe it's about connection, Ravi said softly. About feeling seen. Neil's lips curved into a faint smile. You see me, Not just you, Ravi replied. Your struggles, your fears. They sat in silence, the airport noises swirling around them like a distant storm. Later, Neil invited Ravi to a charity gala, something he usually avoided. The ballroom was glittering, filled with people who talked in polished tones and wore masks of perfection. Ravi felt out of place in his simple suit, his hands clammy. But then Neil took his hand, and the world shifted. They moved through the crowd like two different worlds colliding, one of wealth and one of grit. At one point a woman approached Neil with a smug smile. "I didn't expect you'd bring someone like him." Neil's eyes flashed. "He's more than you'll ever be." Ravi's heart pounded. He wanted to disappear. Neil pulled him closer. "Forget them." They found a quiet corner and Neil whispered, "You belong here, with me." Ravi swallowed the lump in his throat. Later that night, as they walked home beneath streetlights and humming wires, Ravi said, "I don't want to be someone's charity." Neil stopped and looked at him. "You're not. You're my equal. But I come from nothing. Then we'll build something new. Together." Ravi squeezed Neil's hand. He realized that love wasn't about fixing each other. It was about standing side by side, no matter the odds. The weeks that followed tested them both. Ravi's work demanded more, and Neil's world pulled him in directions Ravi couldn't always follow. But every night they found each other, sometimes in whispered phone calls, sometimes in stolen moments over coffee. One evening, Ravi came home to find Neil waiting with a small wrapped box. Inside was a delicate silver ring. Simple, elegant. Neil slid it onto Ravi's finger. "No promises yet. Just a reminder. I'm here." Tears welled in Ravi's eyes. "I'm scared." "Me too," Neil admitted. But together, they were brave enough to try. The first real test came when Ravi's world and Neil's collided with the blunt force of reality. It was late evening, and Ravi had stayed late at the airport to oversee a deep cleaning project. The terminal was mostly empty, save for a few cleaning crews and scattered travelers rushing for last-minute flights. His phone buzzed. "Neil. Can you come to the hospital?" Neil's voice was strained, barely above a whisper. Ravi's stomach dropped. "What happened?" "There was an accident. Mom fell. She's stable, but they want me here." Without hesitation, Ravi left his post and raced to Neil's side. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and fear. Sahana lay in a bed, pale, but awake, clutching Neil's hand. Ravi stepped forward, feeling suddenly small in the sterile room. Sahana looked at him and smiled softly. "You've been such a good influence on my son." Ravi felt warmth flood his chest. "I'm just trying to be worthy." Neil sighed. "Mom's not as tough as she pretends." The hours passed in a blur of doctors and tests. Ravi stayed quiet, watching the way Neil's eyes softened when he touched his mother's hand. That night, they sat in the waiting room, shoulders touching, exhaustion heavy but shared. Neil looked at Ravi. "You're part of this now, our family, and I want you to know that means everything to me." Ravi swallowed past the lump in his throat. "I want to be here, all of it." Over the next days, Ravi balanced hospital visits with his supervisor duties. He realized leadership wasn't just about schedules and supplies. It was about being present when it mattered most. Back at the terminal, the cleaning crews noticed the change. Ravi was more patient, more open, yet still firm when needed. One evening, Bhaskar approached him quietly. "Thanks for being there for me," he said. "I'm trying to do better." Ravi smiled. "We all have to keep trying." Neil's mother recovered slowly, but the experience brought them closer. One afternoon, Ravi found Sahana in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for a meal. "You've grown," she said, eyes crinkling. "Not just in your job, but in your heart." Ravi felt a tear escape. "I owe it to your son." She took his hand. "You owe it to yourself." That night, Neil and Ravi sat on the balcony, city lights flickering like distant stars. Neil pulled Ravi close. "I don't know what the future holds." "Neither do I," Ravi admitted. "But whatever comes, we face it together." And for the first time, the uncertainty felt like hope. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of adjustments, balancing Neil's demanding social life and Ravi's growing responsibilities at the airport, all while nurturing the fragile roots of their relationship. Ravi found himself navigating a new world of upscale restaurants and formal events, often feeling like a shadow slipping between worlds. Yet every smile from Neil, every gentle touch, reassured him he belonged, not just as an outsider, but as an equal partner. One Saturday afternoon, Neil invited Ravi to a charity auction. The room buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, but beneath the surface, Ravi felt a storm of anxiety. He watched Neil effortlessly charm the crowd, the ease with which he belonged, both inspiring and intimidating. When it was Ravi's turn to speak about his own work at the airport, his voice trembled, but his sincerity silenced the room. After the event, Neil pulled him aside. "You were incredible," Ravi shook his head. "I'm not like you. I don't belong in these places." Neil smiled softly. "You belong with me, and that's all that matters." Their bond deepened as Ravi began to see Neil's world through new eyes, one of pressure, expectations, and hidden loneliness behind the glitter. At the same time, Neil glimpsed Ravi's resilience and authenticity, qualities money couldn't buy. One evening, as they walked through a quiet park, Ravi stopped and looked up at the stars. "I'm scared of losing myself," he confessed, "of becoming someone I'm not." Neil reached for his hand. "Then hold on to who you are. I love that man." In the months that followed, they faced challenges, whispers from colleagues about their unlikely relationship, moments of doubt, and the heavy weight of public opinion. But their love became a sanctuary, a place where vulnerability was met with understanding. Ravi began organizing small gatherings for his cleaning team, inviting Neil to join. The barriers slowly crumbled as their worlds intertwined. One afternoon, Mira called with exciting news. She had been accepted to a prestigious university abroad. Ravi and Neil celebrated quietly, dreaming of the future they were building, one that stretched beyond the airport's walls and beyond society's expectations. As spring bloomed, Ravi realized that love wasn't about perfect moments, but about choosing each other again and again through uncertainty and change. He smiled, knowing that no matter where life took them, they would face it side by side. The airport was buzzing with the usual chaos when Ravi noticed her, an elegant woman in a sharply tailored suit, sitting alone by the departure gates, her face pale and weary. Neil had mentioned her before, his sister Aisha, a woman who lived far from the city's glittering skyline, caught in her own battles with illness and isolation. Ravi approached cautiously. "You look like you could use some company." Aisha smiled faintly, her eyes tired but kind. "Thank you. It's been a long day." They talked quietly, the din of announcements fading around them. Ravi learned of her struggles, years of hospital visits, the weight of family expectations, and a loneliness that stretched deeper than the distance between flights. For the first time, Ravi saw a different side of Neil, one shaped by duty and love for a sister he rarely spoke about. Over the following weeks, Ravi made it a point to check on Aisha, bringing her warm meals and stories from the airport floor. Neil watched from afar, gratitude shining in his eyes. One evening, as Ravi helped Aisha with her medications, she looked up and said, "You're a good man." Ravi felt the words settle in his heart like a gentle promise. That night, he and Neil sat on the rooftop, city lights glittering beneath a sky full of stars. Neil reached out, taking Ravi's hand. "Thank you for being my anchor." Ravi squeezed back. "And thank you for letting me in." Their love had grown beyond the simple moments. They were now intertwined with family, challenges, and the quiet strength found in shared vulnerability. But life had one more test waiting. A sudden phone call shattered their fragile peace. Aisha's condition had worsened. Ravi dropped everything, rushing to the hospital where he found Neil pacing the sterile halls. They held each other, words unnecessary. For days they waited, prayed, and hoped, finding solace in the smallest glances and the warmth of joined hands. When Aisha finally stabilized, relief flooded the room, but the experience left them both changed, more aware of the preciousness of time and the depths of their commitment. As they left the hospital, Neil whispered, "I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want to face it with you." Ravi nodded, heart full. Together, they were ready for whatever came next. Ravi's world shifted quietly but irrevocably the day the airport announced a major expansion. New terminals, more staff, and opportunities none of the cleaners had ever dreamed of. For Ravi, it was more than just a promotion chance. It was the chance to rewrite his story, not as a man who swept floors unseen, but as a leader who could change lives. He threw himself into the work, drafting proposals, rallying his team, and advocating for better wages and conditions. The resistance was fierce, management wary of change, some colleagues skeptical of his ambitions. But Ravi held firm, fueled by the faces of those who depended on him. Bhaskar working double shifts, Mira juggling studies and work, even the timid Pasha finding his voice. Neil stood by him, offering support behind the scenes and at public meetings, their partnership a quiet force against the tide of doubt. Late nights blurred into early mornings as Ravi balanced paperwork and hands-on cleaning, his resolve tested but unbroken. One evening, as they sat on the rooftop watching the city lights pulse below, Neil turned to him. "You're making a difference," he said softly. Ravi smiled, exhaustion and pride mingling. "I'm just trying to be the man I promised myself I'd become." The expansion was approved. The celebrations were modest but heartfelt. Ravi's team knew this was just the beginning. In that moment, Ravi realized his journey had come full circle, from the boy dreaming of a better life to the man shaping one for others. Yet amidst the triumph, he felt a quiet whisper of doubt. Could he carry the weight of his past and the hopes of his future without losing himself? Neil sensed the question without words. "Whatever happens," Neil said, brushing a stray hair from Ravi's forehead, "we face it together." And with that, Ravi found his answer. The night air was thick with tension as Ravi faced the biggest challenge of his new role. A meeting. With airport executives resistant to his proposals, he entered the sleek conference room, nerves twisting in his stomach, but he carried the weight of his team's hopes and his own unyielding determination. The executives questioned every line, doubted every number, but Ravi spoke with clarity and passion, weaving stories of cleaners whose lives could change with better pay and safer conditions. At one point, a senior director scoffed, "This isn't a charity." Ravi's voice was steady. "It's about dignity." The room fell silent. Hours later, after tense negotiations and last-minute compromises, the executives agreed to pilot Ravi's program. Outside, Bhaskar waited, a mix of pride and relief on his face. "You did it," he said simply. Ravi nodded, exhaustion crashing over him. Back home, Neil greeted him with a quiet embrace. "You were amazing," Neil whispered. "I couldn't have done it without you." Their love had become a sanctuary amid the storm of change, a place where they could breathe and be themselves. But the real victory was in the eyes of Ravi's team, the smiles, the gratitude, the quiet hope rekindled. One morning, as Ravi arrived at work, Mira ran up, clutching a letter from the university she'd been dreaming of. "I got in," she said, eyes shining. Ravi lifted her into a hug, tears prickling his own eyes. "Your dreams are alive," he told her. That night, as Ravi and Neil lay tangled in the quiet darkness, Ravi whispered, I'm still afraid. Neil kissed his forehead. Fear means you care. It means you're alive. And with that, Ravi felt the weight lift just enough to breathe. They had come so far, yet the journey was just beginning. The morning sun spilled golden light across the city as Ravi stood at the airport entrance, the hum of arrivals and departures filling the air with endless possibility. Today marked a new chapter, not just for the airport but for him. The pilot program had been a success. Cleaner schedules were fairer, wages higher, and morale lifted. The team looked at him with respect, not just as a supervisor, but as someone who believed in their worth. Neil was waiting nearby, a quiet smile on his face, pride radiating like the morning sun. Ravi thought back to the first time they met, two strangers crossing paths in a crowded terminal, bound by a moment of kindness and an unspoken promise. Love had grown between them, not despite their differences, but because of them. As they walked hand in hand through the terminal, Ravi caught the scent of freshly brewed coffee and the distant echo of laughter. It was ordinary and extraordinary all at once. Later, in a small cafe tucked inside the airport, Neil surprised Ravi with a simple gift, a framed photo of the two of them, captured in a candid moment of joy. Ravi's eyes brimmed with tears. "We've built something real," Neil said softly. "Yes," Ravi agreed, "something worth fighting for." The future stretched out before them, uncertain, unpredictable, but theirs to face together. And, in that moment, surrounded by the ebb and flow of travelers and the quiet hum of life moving forward, Ravi knew one thing for certain. Love, like hope, could find its way even in the most unlikely places. They were no longer just a millionaire and a cleaner. They were partners, ready to write the next chapter side by side. The story of Ravi and Neil reminds us that love often arrives in the quiet moments, in the spaces between duty and desire, wealth and humility. It shows us that true connection transcends backgrounds, social status, and the hardships life throws our way. Through Ravi's journey from a humble airport cleaner to a man who finds courage, purpose, and love, we witness the profound power of kindness and resilience. Neil's willingness to see beyond appearances and embrace vulnerability teaches us that real strength lies in openness and trust. As you reflect on their story, consider the unexpected places where love might be waiting for you, and the moments where courage can turn into transformation. Life's most beautiful chapters are often written together, built on mutual respect, understanding, and a shared leap of faith. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Don't forget to drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're tuning in from. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Until next time, keep your heart open and your story unfolding.